Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca, Canada's authority on home ownership. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back on, Jim.
Ross, this week we're starting to get May stats, as you call them, being released. I think I saw something about Vancouver sales month to month, up 39% or some ridiculous number. Anyway, we're going to be hearing far-ranging opinions on what these so-called stats mean. What's your take on what's really going on out there?
Well, my take is this, Jim. As we're sitting here talking, and everybody's playing these games that they're playing right now with housing stats and housing market commentary, as the world seems to be under a lockdown, we're under a lockdown still, as racial tensions are flaring in the United States. As all of this is going on, the wealth of our nation in Canada is evaporating in real time. We are sitting here today, and over the course of the time that we're going to record this, there is going to be millions upon millions of dollars of wealth that will evaporate in real numbers. Wealth that you could have accessed at the start of this show will not be available at the end of this show. And I understand that listeners probably can't comprehend what I'm saying, or it sounds like a foolish story, but when the wealth of a nation is dropping by the billions of dollars each day, we're talking of millions of dollars each minute. And that's really what I see when I hear all these comments coming out about May stats. You've watched over the last couple of months as housing pundits have been seeking to find talking points that they could seize upon that would try to elevate the quality of what they're saying. You're going to see today. You're going to see, I believe, Vancouver releases today. Yesterday was Calgary. In the next couple of days, or maybe even tomorrow, will be the Toronto Real Estate Board. Regional real estate boards across Canada release. The following week, the provincial real estate bodies will all make comments. And then the third week, 2 more weeks from now, you're going to hear the Canadian Real Estate Association issue there. The constant pounding down of talking points by these groups as the wealth of the nation is evaporating. What we have to accept is we have an economy that is eroding daily. With each passing day as we're locked down, it gets worse and worse and worse. We are not going to see the jobs return that existed before this happened. They will not come back. The housing market, as it has existed before, will not come back. I don't care what everybody is saying out there. You need a certain velocity in a housing market simply to keep prices where they are today, let alone increasing. That velocity is no longer there. I don't know if that velocity will be back for the next 2 years. Contrary, or the other side of the coin, is the comments coming out of CMHC about a potential 18% house price drop. Again, these are comments coming from people who shouldn't be making these kind of comments if their own data, their own math, their own forecast can't convincingly prove what they're saying, which they can't. CMHC doesn't even have the remotest idea how you measure house prices. And that's evidenced in their housing report that they released last week, where they quoted MLS average in the context of an existing. So this is what I want your listeners to understand from what I'm saying right now. A couple of years ago, we contacted CMHC and we spoke with Bob Dugan on a conference call. We explained to him that MLS prices never measure existing home prices. Why are you continuing to do that? He feigned ignorance at that time. Oh, we didn't know that. Well, I said, well, you do your research and find out, because what I'm telling you is MLS average price has nothing to do with house prices. Well, they revised their charts after that, dropping the word resale and existing. Now the charts just say MLS average or MLS sales. But those charts appear in the exact same, alongside paragraphs that reference existing housing. So the Canadian consumer hears the word existing housing, sees CMHC using the MLS average, and they conflate it because for decades, CMHC said that was what resale housing numbers was. The MLS average was house prices. Even though they removed the words, the charts and the wording still appears on the same page. As the wealth of the nation evaporates before our very eyes, this is what's going on with all these stats. What happens when the wealth of a nation declines is that people quit spending money. When people quit spending money, the economy gets even worse. More layoffs happen. The multiplicity effect on the way up works on the way down. We don't believe economies, and household consumption-derived economies, reliant economies, where the economy goes first, and then that's going to drive consumption. We believe it's just the opposite. We believe household wealth goes up first, and that drives an increase in GDP. That's what we believe. That's what our data says. That's what our methodology shows. That's what all of our math shows. That's, to us, that we can prove what we're saying. We can prove this going back into the 1980s. So what the stat commentary, which continues to pretend we're going to have a V-shaped, a U-shaped, a year from now, the market's going to be back to where it was. If you're going to buy now. If you're going to sell now. It's always now, any side of the coin. Or it's the veiled, well, we're not really sure what's going to happen with things, so you should, maybe wait. They never give a firm side in the way down. And the one fellow who gives a negative on the way down, Evan Siddell from CMHC, he gives something that none of his metrics are ever going to record. Because the MLS average price is not going to record an 18% drop in price because it's measuring home buyers. It's not measuring house prices. And we have said hundreds of times in this show. So what I'll tell your listeners is what they should be listening to. They should be listening to the words of organized real estate and understanding that those words are being used solely to increase the commission earnings of their members. The members of those associations who you hear talking out in the public have grown up in an environment where they believe the talking point their real estate bodies tell them. They still believe, they really truly believe new sales to listings ratio is a viable stat. They truly believe the number of homes that they count on the MLS matters. They still believe supply and demand is the way that organized real estate has taught them to believe. They can sit back and say, oh, well, maybe the stats that they're releasing are not really fully telling you what's going on in the market. What we're telling you, it's just the opposite. They're telling you the stats they're issuing you are just telling you the opposite of really what's going on in the market because they're useless stats. So when you hear far-ranging opinions, understand those people are speaking these words as the wealth of the nation is evaporating in real time. What was a $6 trillion asset class is dropping by millions of dollars in value every single minute. I don't care what anybody else says. The data shows that's exactly what's happening.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after the break.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, a listener was wondering if Canadian citizens, if they return from Hong Kong, does that create a chance that house prices will not drop as much as CMHC is predicting because they'll be back in Canada buying homes?
You know, Jim, before this, earlier today I was on a Zoom call for, I guess, almost 2 hours listening to so-called housing academics and economists talking about housing markets and what's going to happen as a consequence of COVID. When they stayed off of housing market forecasting or predicting, most of what they're saying you could logically understand, and I would say that we could prove with data what they're saying is true. So as long as they were staying off those topics, the housing market itself, what they're saying, there was a lot of legitimacy to it. What you're talking about here would make a lot of sense to a lot of people. First of all, I want to say this, the listener who used the word repatriated Canadians coming from Hong Kong, I mean, that is a fantastic terminology to use at this particular moment in time, because these are Canadians coming back to possibly homes that they own. These are Canadians. They happen to be living in Hong Kong, but they are Canadians. But that says you would need to see a massive flow of people who live in Hong Kong coming back to Canada in such numbers that you would be able to see it. I've heard numbers. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, because I don't believe the data exists that conclusively proves it. There may be as many as 300,000 Canadians who currently living in Hong Kong. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Well, I know at least two personally, so there's at least two.
Well, there's two, and let's say that it's, families in a lot of cases.
And they already own a home in Vancouver that was under construction when they left for Hong Kong.
There you go.
So they're not going to be buying any new real estate. They're just going to buy to what's been built for them.
Right. So what you're looking at, it would take immigration from Hong Kong. And then we have to say is what is the Canadian government going to do in terms of immigration? What I believe that it's not right that someone comes into Canada with $1 million because they've lived in some other country where the infrastructure that they have built that wealth in gave them a competitive advantage on wealth building over what a Canadian family would have. I don't think it's right that we let people come in to Canada per se and buy up Canadian homes when we're not building enough homes for Canadian families to keep the prices down. So everyone knows I'm pro-immigration. I'm pro welcoming people into this country, but I want to welcome people into this country without harming Canadian families in the process. And that means, from the way that we see things, the housing stock growth rate has to increase by about 0.4%. So when we look at the housing stock, Jim, we look at the housing stock growth rate with the population growth rate, or household growth rate is what we really prefer to look at. And we like to look at those two numbers, because those numbers take into immigration, household formation, in other words, people getting married, households ending, and as population ages, people passing on, and those houses returning to the housing stock. We look at all these things, and we know that the Canadian government needs to increase the growth rate of the Canadian housing stock. That's simple. when we say the growth rate of the Canadian housing stock, that doesn't mean we should continue to force Canadians to live in a smaller and smaller and smaller home, which is what they do with these new one-bedroom condominium high-rises that they claim to be affordable housing. It's just nonsense. It's foolishness. So when we hear these comments about, this is gonna solidify the house prices in Vancouver, or some of this is gonna flow into the Toronto market, or even some of this is gonna go back into Montreal. No, that's not gonna make any difference. There is not enough money available to bring back into this country right now as we're exiting this lockdown, or as we will be exiting it over the next couple of months, to refire the Canadian housing market as we know it. I would hope that Canadian politicians, in turn, will see the value in growing the housing stock at levels we haven't seen since the 1960s. When we grow the housing stock, even a minute level greater than the household growth rate increases, then you naturally have downward pressure on home prices. Every new home that is built, that is purchased by a household in Canada, has a multiplicity effect on the economy, on GDP, that does not take place when those dollars are spent in the resale housing market. If I was a Canadian politician today, the way that I'm refiring the economy, the way I'm getting everything going back as quickly as I can, without doing the least amount of damage and the most amount of good, is to build brand new homes at numbers this country hasn't seen in 4 decades. I am bringing back the belief in Canadians that your first choice should be a brand new home, because I know of all of the economic positive that comes from buying a brand new home that is wasted when those dollars go into the resale housing market. So if I was a Canadian politician, that's what I'd be doing. But in terms of the amount of immigration that would be required back in this country to refire the resale housing market, it's just not going to take place. We're going to see unemployment levels in this country we haven't seen in a very long time. We are already hearing, now what I mean we is by my firm, is already hearing of the layoffs, the people who will not be coming back to jobs that they held in the past. That is taking place already. We know the vacancies are going to be happening in the retail market, the retail segment, the office segment, the industrial, not so much, but it will in the short term. It will in the short term. The rental market. We're going to see housing stock come back into the for sale market. We're going to see housing stock that was rental come back into the for sale market. We're going to see short-term Airbnbs come into the long-term rental market. It's going to put negative pressure. We're already seeing it. Negative downward pressure on prices in certain municipalities. Not all, certain. And in those municipalities, as the downward pressure on rent happens, outward municipalities will benefit. People, in other words, tenants will benefit from that. The value of the rental property as a result will deflate, meaning that the next buyer looking to acquire that property won't pay the same price that they were going to pay pre-lockdown. All of the realities of housing markets, of the trading cycle, are going to be coming home to roost right now. And it will be right throughout the fall. So there's really no fear of Canadian families who live in Hong Kong coming back home, driving the Canadian housing market forward. Any mass migration, the amount of mass migration required to do that is not possible. I also think we have to take into context that Canadian voters are not going to allow that to happen. We're going to say, let's take care of ourselves first before we extend our hand out to help someone else. And I think really this lockdown is reteaching us the importance of taking care of your own family first. And the better condition you put your own family in, the more you can reach out your hand to help someone else.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, a major newspaper reported a 37-year-old woman who has a son living with her in Toronto wonders if she can buy a house. Her plan is, and she makes $48,000 a year, has $150,000 in debt. She wants to fund her son's post-secondary education and eventually after that, I guess, buy a home. What are the prospects for her and what would your advice to her be?
Well, my advice to her is going to be the same as the type of advice I would give to anybody in her situation, Jim. I think this is the one that was I think it was in the Globe and Mail is where this story. These type of stories come out in the press pretty regularly. You get one or two a week, where people are giving them advice. And most of the advice, from our perspective, is advice that is qualified on not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings or wanting to continue to let a dream happen that is never going to turn into a reality. And this would be the case of this woman here. The very first thing she would do is she needs to talk to a licensed insolvency company. So that means someone who the government licensed to handle bankruptcies. That's the very first step that this lady should make. I'm going to take a step further. My belief is this, and I'm saying this today, something I never would have said, even 15 years ago. Every single Canadian who's going to buy a home should be having a meeting with a licensed insolvency consultant before they buy a home. Because these people have the perspective of dealing with thousands of people who get themselves into trouble. Often it's not their fault. They just never thought of things before they got into it. They simply followed the path that has been laid out before them by governments and stakeholders, and they believe that path is safe because all these people have told them that it was a safe path to take. In most of cases, the path is not safe. It's going to put pressure on your life that you probably weren't willing to accept had you known that pressure was going to be placed upon you. My advice to this woman is probably the same type of advice, Jim, you would give if you look in the context of how you grew up. The first thing I would say is, if I'm not mistaken, this son was 15 in this article. Your son should get a part-time job. There's no reason that your son, in your situation, is not out working 10 to 12 hours a week at McDonald's or at a Walmart or somewhere with a part-time job. There's no reason. That money should be banked. He should have a certain amount of that he spends, but if his goal is really to go to university, let him bank it in the summers. Instead of going to camp or something, he's 15 years old, 16 and then 17 and then off to school. Let him work summers. You can probably make $4,000 to $5,000 a summer over 2 summers, and working while he's going to school shouldn't crimp his life at all. 10 to 12 hours a week. Should be able to still go party with his friends when he gets old enough. Still should be able to play sports. Shouldn't interfere with any of those things. He's going to have probably the first year of university paid for. Whatever town you're living in, city you're living in, tell him to go to that university so that he could live at home, take transit. It's not going to be what he wants, but that's the way. So what? Are you going to be paying for a lifestyle that he gets to go to university and party all the time? Now, if you want to go to university and party, as I did, as a young guy, pay for it yourself, as I did. I worked and then went back to school. Took time off, went back to school. I enjoyed university. I think I was there almost 7 years, on and off. I loved university life. I paid for it. My parents didn't pay a penny. So there's the step for you turning your son into education. You're earning $48,000 a year. Okay. Now, here's the reality of what we're talking about. Move. What are you doing trying to live in Toronto on $48,000 a year? This is like hearing households who earn 74, the median Canadian household income, thinking they want to live in Vancouver or Toronto. Don't do it. You are going to constrain your entire life based on your belief that you want to live there. You need to move to somewhere where the cost is lower, because probably, you're talking about a $48,000 a year earnings, you can move somewhere else and earn $10,000 a year less and still be further ahead, because your cost of home is so much lower. You already have, this person already has $150,000 in debt. I don't know what the repayments are in that, but I know that on $48,000 a year after tax, I don't know how long you're going to be paying off $150,000 in debt. I think it's better to talk to a debt insolvency person and have that predetermined. But that's a lesson. That is a lesson for everybody else to learn from. Don't get yourself in that situation. Don't let things build up. Think about things ahead of time before they get to that point. And then the other thing that the reality is, we are going to see a transformation in where you have a choice of living as a result of this lockdown. You are already hearing comment that Twitter and Facebook are going to allow their employees to work from home. I don't think people have any understanding the transformational power that you are given when you can choose to live where you want to live. It's a choice. Now, if you choose to live in Beverly Hills, meaning Toronto or Vancouver, that's your choice. You are going to live with the consequences of that choice from a wealth perspective. You are never going to be able to build wealth in those two cities as you would in, let's say, out in Kelowna, or Abbotsford in the Greater Vancouver area, or that you would in Bracebridge or Barrie in the Greater Toronto area. It won't happen. This is a transformational time in our lives, because this is the very first time where technology really does meet up with corporations' desires. This is really the first time. How technology interacts with employees and how CEOs are determining their risk and ways of earning profit. It's colliding right now as we're talking here in the show. We're seeing it in real time when Facebook and Twitter are saying, hey, we're going to have people who are never going to have to work in the office again. They're going to work full time. Now, I understand that these companies, these corporations, are going to have to learn the realities of not being face-to-face contact with your workers and your employees and your staff. I can tell you there's a synergy of people that takes place that does not happen when you work remote. My perspective on this comes from the real estate sector, which is always a technology pioneer in terms of how people work. Organized real estate moved to a work-from-home model in the early 2000s. As soon as computers were economical enough that everybody could own one, and modems were quick enough where you could access MLS data at home, people moved out of the office because it was cheaper. I also know that productivity fell per agent as a result of that decision. I know that there is a synergy that takes place when people are together, throwing ideas back and forth, looking each other in the eye, watching how someone reacts to a comment that you made or an idea that you have, the accountability that you have with someone in the next office to you, not in the next city, connected over Wi-Fi, because you're not going to be watching them 24 or all the hours that they're at work. So this woman may be offered an opportunity. She may be offered an opportunity where she can move to another city and even maintain her existing job. I think for most of us, this is how we need to be looking at the next period of our lives. We need to be looking at ways that we can minimize our monthly household expense, which primarily is my housing expense, and how my net savings or my net wealth can benefit as I lower that expense. I think you start that process off by talking with someone who's experienced in the debt that the ordinary Canadian family incurs, and all of the lessons that those people can give you of the pitfalls so many families fall into. So my answer to this woman, Jim, would be talk to a licensed insolvency professional first. And second, this is your chance. Technology is about to transform your life.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been homeownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.